And I'm really happy that she's here because initially she wasn't able to make it. She comes to us from a 2-week in Florida from the launch of the new Maven spacecraft. So I know this is much anticipated. Without much ado, I'm going to ask her to come up.
Lives on today with our current exploration of the solar system. And of course, I will not be able to tell you everything about the exploration of the solar system in 10 minutes, but I will be here afterwards, and if you'd like to hear more, come talk to me in the back. All right, so here we go. So of course, in 1961, John F. Kennedy first proposed to Congress and said, let's bring Americans to the moon by the end of the decade. Now this was a pretty big proposal, very ambitious. He knew that it would take a lot of scientists and engineers that we did not have at the time, or not enough of them. He knew that it would take technology and even materials that hadn't yet been invented. And he also knew that it would take a pretty good amount of money. But he also knew what benefits the space program would have for society. He was thinking about the jobs that would be created both in the public and the private sector. He was thinking about the technology that would be developed and what that would do for our hospitals and for our schools and for our homes. And he was thinking about how the more we understand about the universe, what will that bring to our education system as well as the field of science? And he knew that as we were heading towards the goal of bringing Americans to the moon by the end of the decade, that this would unite our country. And we watched as one, as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin first stepped on the moon in July of 1969. Sorry, I'm new at this technology. We can go to space, but we can't use remotes. Can you just click to the next slide? All right, so more than 40 years later, we are still exploring the moon, and right now we are learning about the moon in new ways. We are finding out the surface, the shape of the moon, better than any other planet, including the Earth. We also are finding out the temperature environment of the moon. We're finding out where the water is. And as we are going and doing all of this exploration, we are taking pictures, taking pictures that are so fantastic. If you went to the moon and you laid down and you made a moon angel, this camera on board the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter could see you, which I think is pretty cool. So this is an example of two of the pictures that the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter camera has taken. This is a Tycho crater, which you may have seen as you look out at the moon, which I hope you all do, and it's that bright red crater. Well, this is the central peak of it. That mountain in the middle of the impact crater is over a mile high. And I'm not sure if you can see that tiny little something else that the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter camera is taking pictures of are all of the Apollo landing sites. So every time the camera goes over these places on the moon during the day and takes a picture, and I'm not sure you can see all the trails very well. Oh, going back one. Can you go back one? Thank you. So this is a zoom in of the site, and can you see those dark lines on there? Anybody see those in the picture? All right, those are actually tracks of astronauts that walked on the surface of the moon. And we take these pictures every time so we can see them throughout the day, and we can also see really neat things like the shadows of the American flag that are still standing on the surface today. So we can trace those shadows as we look at it at the morning hours and the afternoon hours and at noon, and we can actually see some of those flags still standing on the moon. All right, so I just came back from the Maven launch, and I'm very excited about this mission as well. This mission is going to be studying the upper atmosphere of Mars, because we want to understand what Mars was like in the past. Our evidence from the surface suggests that there was once water, liquid water, stable on the surface. And that's something that we can't have today. This is a condition that is no longer available, at least for a long period of time. And we have to, in order to get that water on the surface, we need a really thick atmosphere in order to get those warm, wet conditions. And we don't have that anymore. There's about 1% of Earth's atmosphere in terms of volume surrounding Mars today. So we want to know where it went. We want to know what happened to it. Where did it go? And Maven is going to help us understand the current state of the Mars atmosphere today, and also how much is being lost because of the solar wind out into space. And by studying those things, we're hoping to trace back in time and understand what Mars was like early in its history, at a time when we think it may have been habitable, when it may have allowed life to exist on the surface of the planet. All right, and it's also going to be joining a very famous rover, one that's as big as a Mini Cooper, tall enough to look an NBA basketball player in the eye, and it's driving around shooting lasers on Mars at rocks. This is the Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity rover. This is the largest, most sophisticated science experiment we have ever sent to another planet. This rover is trying to look for habitable environments on Mars, like I had just mentioned. We had for a long time been trying to follow the water, figure out where the water was, because we knew that life needs water to survive. Well, we've been there, we've done that, we've found the water. Now we're following the carbon. We are looking for the building blocks of life on Mars. And guess what? We have found a habitable environment on Mars. A past one, it's not today, but we can go and read records from earlier in Mars's history. And we have found the chemical building blocks, some of them, the key ones that are needed to support life. We have found chemical ingredients that would have supplied microbes, tiny little creatures, with the energy they would need to survive. We've also found salinity that's pretty low, which is also quite nice for microbes that like that. And we found that the pH is pretty neutral in at least one location so far. That is also really nice to have it more like our drinking water than the battery acid that we have found that's about the pH of the previous environments we have found in water on Mars. So this is very exciting. This microbes could be, our next goal would be to go and find out if they are there. Now I wanted to show you this. This is a very impressive rock. Doesn't it just look stunning? This is one of those rocks that had that evidence of a past habitable environment. So it may not look incredibly stunning, but it had a really exciting story to tell. And we are looking forward as curiosity drives on towards Mount Sharp to hear more of the stories and find out what other discoveries curiosity will be able to make as it continues its journey up the mountain. All right, I also had to mention, I know that there are several students in the audience and they were all told to watch the 7 Minutes of Terror. How many of you have watched the 7 Minutes of Terror? A lot of people have homework. Everybody needs to go watch this. This is a video about how the Curiosity rover landed on Mars. Now, when you all go home and watch this, as I know you will, I want you to imagine being in the room and having the decision of how to land Curiosity lie on your shoulders and being told by the group of engineers that, okay, we want to go to Mars and we want to slow this rover down with a heat shield. Then we're going to deploy a parachute behind us. Then we're going to give the rover a jetpack with power. And we're going to have this sky crane, this rover jetpack, lower the rover down on nylon ropes to the surface. And once it hits the surface with its wheels, it's going to cut off those nylon ropes and the jetpack's going to fly off and crash land somewhere else. And by the way, this is all going to be automated because we don't have the signal to be able to communicate directly. And by the way, we can't test it all here on Earth because we don't have the conditions to do that. We'll just have to test each piece. Sound good? And guess what? It worked! It worked flawlessly. It was amazing. The engineering team worked so well together. It was incredible. They landed right exactly, almost in the middle of that landing ellipse where it was supposed to land. There was actually a game at Jet Propulsion Laboratory guessing where it would land, and it was right there in the middle. So this allowed the scientists to be able to select the landing site for Curiosity instead of only having the engineers wanting to send it to the most boring, safest spot. We got to go to a really exciting place because they were able to use a new technology to land the rover on the surface. And this has great potential for future landers and rovers on Mars because we have this new technology. So, I would like to end here by just thinking about how John F. Kennedy's vision for space exploration and idea of sending Americans to the moon by the end of the decade, this lives on. Curiosity and Maven are not only understanding the Mars environment for the scientists today, they're paving the way for future human explorers of Mars. And right now, the proposed timeline for doing that is in the 2030s. So if you are a student in the audience today, this means that you might be the person to set foot on Mars, the very first person to do that. I encourage you all to stay in school and pick up more science